Welcome to the second video in my Modern Architecture series. My name is Jesper Scherpenhuizen and today I want to talk about Docker Repositories. In the first video of this series, I've introduced some of the key concepts of Docker, and maybe the most important one there was the whole concept of portability. So how can I create an image on my laptop and then deploy that to production, being absolutely certain that that will run just the same. And that whole notion of portability, of course, makes Docker one of the most interesting technologies of the last decade, but it also introduces, well, the whole notion of shareability there as well. Because if it's going to be working on my machine just the same as it's going to be working on your machine, then my image might be of value to you as well, whether you're in the same organization, the same company as I am in, or it might just be that you're, well, part of the human race and you can benefit from the work that I've done. So if you then have that shareability in mind, then some of the other questions come into play as well. So on the one hand is, where do I deploy or upload these images to? In Docker terms, we call that where do we push these images to? But how do I find them? How do I do version control? How do I make sure that only the right people have access to my images? Whether it's in my organization, my department, or within the whole global scheme of things, how do I make sure that only the right people have access to it? Those are, of course, the questions that I want to answer in today's video, and I want to make it as hands-on as can be. So if you want to follow along, you'll need to have Kofax RPA for Linux. You also need to have a valid license. You need to have Docker Desktop up and running. Make sure that it's running. You need to have Windows Terminal or something similar. You need to have Visual Studio Code or any other text editor. And you need to have the containers from the previous video. So if you don't have them or you haven't watched that, feel free to do that, and then afterwards you can follow along as well. Well, without further ado, one of the first questions that we need to answer is, of course, where do I want to upload or push these images to? Well, the best known repository out there is, of course, Docker Hub. And it's free, and if you've already registered on docker.com, you already have access to it as well. But there are other solutions out there, so you can do it on Amazon ECR, the Microsoft Azure Container Registry, Google Container Registry, you name it. And then next to that, there are several on-premise solutions and maybe even more cloud offerings out there. Which one works best for you is, of course, up to you to decide. I'm going to be using Docker Hub going forward in this video, and well, I would say give it a try, and I'm pretty sure you're going to be liking it. So if you want to sign up, if you don't already have a Docker account, think of an appropriate Docker ID, and the reason for that is your Docker ID will also be the namespace for your repositories. So make it something that makes sense. You need to have a valid email address because you need to verify it. Think of a strong password as always. You need to answer some captchas if you want to register. And as said, you need to verify your email address. I've already done that, just like in cooking shows, and I can then log in with Kofax Hub demo and the password, of course, which I'm not going to be telling you. And you'll see that I don't have any repositories on there yet. So I have my namespace, Kofax Hub demo, and I can now create new repositories. Those repositories can then in turn be public or private. Make sure that you, if you want to do a private one, you only get one for free on Docker Hub. So make it count. Management console. That's the first one I'm going to be creating. I'm going to create that as a public one, and I'll leave that open after this video. So feel free to have a look there. You can, of course, connect your GitHub or Bitbucket account if you want, and you can just create these repositories just as easy. Then you already see that they make sure that you understand how to push these images to Docker Hub. But before we can do that, let's also create one for the robo service first. Let's just do that. here we go. Robo server create. There you have it. So we now have 2 repositories. But how do we then actually get our images up there? So let's switch to the command line to do just that. So if you want to know which images you have on your, let's call it local repository, you can just run the Docker images command, and it's going to show you exactly what you have. So these are the images that we created during the previous video. So you have your MySQL one, you've got a management console and a robo server. And what you'll see is that the robo server and management console have been tagged with the Kofax RPA version. So in this case, 11.1.0.2. That information comes from the compose file. So here you see for the management console that it has tagged the image with management console colon 11.1.0.2, and it also has the builds information there. But if we then look at the MySQL one, we don't see any build information there. We only see a reference to the image. That is then enough for Docker to understand I need to go to an external or online repository and download it from there. MySQL is of course a verified one, so you don't see a namespace there, but for ours we will need to be using a namespace going forward. So what we can then do is we can tag these images with our namespace and with a proper tag. You can do whatever you want with the tag, of course. I personally prefer to use the Kofax RPA version for that, because that's typically the only one I'm going to be building per version. But you can also do a Docker tag without a actual tag. So here we have Docker tag management console 11.1.0.2. Just tag it with Kofax hub demo. So that's our namespace and the repository name management console. This will then result in a tag, and I'm going to be showing you immediately, that's latest. So that's the default tag that you would get then. But if we then also make sure that we grab the same thing for the management console, let me just grab the proper one there. We now have 3 entries with tags for the same image. So you can see that the image ID is the same for the original one that we built in video 1. For the latest one, it's the same image ID, and then we have the 11.1.0.2 tag. It's all the same. So it's nothing more than a reference to the image that we have. And let's do the exact same thing for the robo service. Paste anyway. So we're first going to tag it as latest, and then we're going to tag it as 11.1.0.2. You can then see we have all of these there, but you can also go to your Docker desktop environment and you can see them there as well. For those of you who haven't played around with the Docker desktop, there's a lot of nice things that you can do. You can do pull and push from there as well. I'm going to be doing everything from the command line just to make sure that you've seen it. You can remove everything there as well, and I'm going to be using that to first upload or push all of my images to Docker Hub. I'm then going to be removing it locally, and then I'm going to do a redeploy using Docker Compose, and you're going to be seeing Docker downloading them from Docker Hub. So the next thing we need to do is we need to upload these to Docker Hub. But before we can do that, I need to log in so that we know that we are able to log in there as well. So the name is of course Kofax hub demo. Password. There we go. Login succeeded. And then we can start pushing them. So I'm just going to grab all of my commands there, and I'm just going to be doing it straight away because it's going to take a while to upload all of my images. So there we go. It's actually going to take a lot of time to upload the first one because The second one, so you have the latest and the 11.1.0.2, those are the exact same ones. And what you'll already see is that it's able to recognize, well, I already have these building blocks, these layers as they are called. So it's recognized that this comes from the Tomcat layer, and it just grabs it from there. So you don't have to keep uploading the exact same thing. So once we've uploaded the latest one and then we start to upload the 11.1.0.2, it's going to recognize, hey, this is the exact same image. I'm just going to make sure that we have that reference stored there as well. But then of course the robo server is rather large, so it's going to be taking a while as well. So we now see that indeed that second one was extremely fast, and then we're just going to wait for the robo server to upload as well. It's going to take a while, so I'll be right back after this. When all of your images have been pushed to Docker Hub, you can go to your browser and have a quick look and verify that everything has been uploaded. Everything was fine because we can see that everything was there. So you can just go to your repository, whether it's the robo server or management console, just click on tags and you'll see 11.1.0.2 and you'll see the latest. Both of them are going to be there, and of course the digest, so that's typically a hash value, are going to be the exact same ones. So it's just a reference to the same thing. We can now of course start using that, and it already makes a suggestion there where you can say, well, we can also pull these images back to Docker, but as we already have them, we first need to make sure that we remove them. So what we can then do is in Docker Desktop, you can just say unused and remove them. So then we lose all of our images. Only do this if you know exactly what you're doing. But for the interest of this demo, it's just nice to do that. Perfect. What we can then do, just refresh this to make sure that you can see that we don't have any images left. Go to the command line and say, well, do we have any images left? No images left. So then we go to our compose file, and what you're actually going to be doing is you're going to remove all of the build information. Remove that, and for the image, instead of just leaving that to management console, just use your namespace. So in this case, Kofax Hub demo. And do the same thing for your robo server. Just remove the build information and add your namespace, Kofax Hub demo. Store that. Once you've made these changes, don't forget to save them. Switch to your command line and just say docker compose up -d to detach it. You'll see that it starts pulling in the MySQL service just like it did the previous time. And once it's done that, it'll also pull down the management console and robo server. So this is going to be much quicker than uploading or pushing an image, but you're going to see that it's working just fine. So you see it's now downloading the management console one, lightning fast. And I'll of course speed up the download of the robo server because that's going to take a while. So it's now downloading that, and I'll be back once it's done. So it's finished downloading or pulling all of these images from Docker Hub, and it's now bringing the services up. So let's quickly recap on what we saw. So I showed you how easy it is to tag your images, how you can then push them to a repository, how we can then use those pushed images in either a Docker Compose, and we also saw on the actual, well, Docker Hub in this case, how you can then also pull them in just by using Docker Pull. So this is of course of tremendous value if you have your CI/CD pipelines all built up and you really need to quickly deploy new versions. So we have stories of Kofax RPA customers that the moment we as Kofax release a new version, where they can bring up and spin up new environments in under 6 minutes, specifically by using technology like Docker. So as said, I hope you enjoyed this. Next up, my next video, it's going to be about Kubernetes, and I'm really looking forward to that. In the meantime, if you have any questions, comments, feedback, feel free to reach out either through email, through LinkedIn, or through a YouTube comment. I try to respond to each and every one of them. For now, I would say thanks again for your time. Cheers, and see you again soon.